we're ready to begin our committee meetings this evening. And if the mayor and council will indulge me, we're going to deal with our Public Safety and Public Works Committee first. And that is found behind the brown divider in your notebook. Yes, ma'am.
So we're doing public safety and public works first?
Yes. That's okay with this group?
Are y'all good? Yes.
Wonderful. All right. All right. Thank you for your indulgence. Good evening and welcome to the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for February 13, 2024. I will, of course, acknowledge our elected body, Mayor Kurt Wilson, Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember Alan Sells, Councilmember David Johnson, Councilmember Sarah Beeson, Councilmember G. Lee Hills, Councilmember and Mayor Pro Tem William Morthland. All right, the purpose of committee meetings are for the city departments to convey information to mayor and city council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda, as well as provide updates of vital information essential to the operation of city government. By ordinance, the committee consists of mayor, members of city council, and the city administrator. And the city administrator serves as chair of committee meetings. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is certainly open to the public, we do not take public comments or questions unless specifically authorized by mayor and council. Public comments or questions are received at the regular city council meetings held at 7 p.m. in the city council chambers on the second and fourth Monday of each month and fifth Monday of each month in open forum. We do encourage residents to engage our online platforms. If you have any questions, we ask that you reach out to our staff, and we'd also encourage the viewing audience to go to the city website for meetings, events, and departmental information, and also access the web service portal. Download the Roswell app and roswell365.com for a calendar of events. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting of January 9th, 2024. We'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Hills. Yes. Second by Councilmember Beeson. Any further discussion? All in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And we'll ask for one further indulgence. Let's go with public safety. All right, public safety fire, item number 2. Consideration of a resolution to apply for and accept the 2023 Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response SAFER grant for up to $3,500,000 to hire 30 full-time firefighters and authorize adding up to 30 full-time positions to the amount set by the FY 2025 budget. Deputy Chief Troche.
Thank you, Randy. Mayor, Council. So what you have before you that we're asking for your approval on is an application only for the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response, also referred to as a SAFER grant, for up to $3,500,000 to hire 30 full-time firefighter positions fiscal year 2025. This is an application that we've been working with Charles in the grants division, collaborating to make sure that that was being done, and it is a non-matching. Do you have any questions?
Further questions for Deputy Chief Troche? No questions for Deputy Chief Troche? Everybody understands the commitments associated with this particular grant, I assume? All right. Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, we'll ask for a motion. Motion by Councilmember Beeson. Second by Councilmember Morton. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you very much, David. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, we'll move to we'll go to Public Works, and we will ask for one more indulgence on the agenda for the evening. Item number 4. Item number 4, consideration to approve the 2024 Stormwater Utility Master Plan, only because that is a much broader issue that may also develop the discussion for item number 3. But item number 4, consideration to approve the 2024 Stormwater Utility Master Plan. Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Very excited to be here tonight, but I'm also really excited to be here with our Stormwater Utility Manager, Adam Lyon. Some of you don't see him quite a bit. He's usually out in the field fixing all of the stormwater issues that we do have. But what's really exciting is what we're presenting to you all tonight is kind of where we plan on heading over the next 5 years with the stormwater utility. But to do this presentation, it's only a few slides, and you have in front of you the slides that we're going to go over. But I'm going to have Adam take you all through it.
All right. Thanks for having me. So, quick overview of the presentation, what the utility is, and what we do. Our accomplishments since January 2022, which big changes were made at that time. The goals of our master plan, and then the recommendations to get us to those goals. Of course, we're going to start with priorities. First and foremost is public safety, then protecting the environment, so our streams and improving water quality, maintaining our existing infrastructure, replacing things that have to be replaced, complying with state and federal regulations that actually takes a whole lot of our time. And now we're ensuring that all new infrastructure is compliant. So the infrastructure that we maintain and inspect is enormous. You can see the numbers there, 143 miles and so on. And then we're responsible for that infrastructure now from concept, so plan review, through construction with inspections of public and private infrastructure as it goes in the ground, the maintenance of that infrastructure for its lifespan, and then repair and replacement when necessary at the end of that. Background of the master plan, we've looked at the successes over the past 5 years, and then created a roadmap for success for the next 5 years. It's a living document. Mayor and council can amend it at any time. As an example, in 2022 and 2023, major changes were made, things got better. This master plan and the previous were done in-house, saved the city a significant amount of money. Of the recommendations in our previous master plan, there were 27. We've completed 25. The other 2 will be done this month. So in 2022, the major changes, increasing the CIP budget allowed us a lot more flexibility and some headroom to do some innovative things, namely bundling projects, where we were able to get a bunch of projects that are geographically close together and put them together as a single thing to go out to bid. We thought we'd see some savings from mobilization, and we actually got a lot more savings than we expected, 50%. So not only did increasing the funding get us able to do more projects with more money, but our money was going farther at the same time. Huge number of projects getting added. And the previous year, we had several emergencies, and we had to go out and fix some huge sinkholes next to roads, and we increased our emergency reserve fund to more accurately reflect what that set us back. In 2023, all the stormwater related issues and responsibilities within the city were consolidated to the stormwater department. So in service of that, they moved the plan reviewer from community development to us, and the responsibility for those reviews to us. Also, construction inspectors to make sure that those plans, once they're permitted, are installed as they were approved. An enforcement inspector to make sure that private infrastructure is being maintained as it should be. And then equipment operators to increase our capabilities with our O&M crew. They're doing CIP projects now, and then with the additional crew members, we'll be able to also do the O&M parallel to the CIP project. Goals of our new master plan. Of course, maintain our infrastructure, our core responsibility, increase coordination with other city departments, maintain our fiscal stability, and provide outstanding customer service. The new plan has 24 recommendations. So we've arranged our recommendations under the goal that they service. So for stormwater infrastructure, and I'm just going to hit one bullet point in the interest of time in each of these categories. So detailed inspection of stormwater pipe in the right-of-way. So you're all familiar with the cross-drain program where we inspected all the pipe underneath the roadways. This is all the pipe adjacent to the roadways. So the next most capable to cause harm to our roadways, we will inspect, make sure we know the condition of them and address them as necessary. Next. On increasing coordination, we're coordinating our CIP projects with other departments, and we're trying to get them to coordinate theirs with ours. Essentially, wherever a CIP project touches stormwater, we want to make sure that we get the best outcome for the city. And for outstanding customer service, we're working on additional educational materials and programs to educate the public on our approved level of service. Fiscal stability, we are encouraging participation in our shared stormwater program. There's,
Can I stop you, Adam?
all right,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, was what, Mr. Leatherman in the room?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Mr. Leatherman? Question? Can we go back one? Just go slide one back, one more? Yeah, that one, perfect, go back to that one, yeah. Complete material to educate residents on the city's approval level of service. That planning is going to be done from what aspect? Will it be done out of EPW or out of comms?
We may develop the material that's to be coordinated with communications and how it gets played out. So there's different, I know there's a communications plan that's being developed by Jeff and his team. We're actually creating some of that material so that we can give to them. But there's also just other things that we have throughout the course of just interacting with residents on a day-to-day basis.
Respond, so same keeping, respond to 95% of citizen inquiries within one business day. Are you doing that through 311 customer service, or is it a separate entity out of EPW?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So that is kind of everything that we're looking at. So whether it's 311, whether it's coming in through hyperweb, whether it's coming in through email, whether it's coming in through phone call, that 95% is any touch point that we get that's coming into the stormwater utility. That is what our goal is, 95% of those being within one business day.
You kind of.
And I'll just add to that is that all of that will be funneled through the 311 customer service system, and then when necessary dispatched out into the field to our stormwater and water utility partners as part of that.
But ultimately, the city, so Mr. Knighton and this council, not me, obviously, but the council and Mr. Knighton are ultimately responsible for that 95% plus figure.
Correct.
And the completed material to educate residents on city's approval level of service, that's the ultimate responsibility of Mr. Knighton and this council.
Correct.
And so what I want to make sure is that we have direct alignment on how strategically we're going to deliver those services. So, with all due respect, I just want to make sure we don't get siloed, right? That this is not a function of Public Works, it's a function of the city of Roswell government underneath Mr. Knight's direction and the council's direction. And so we're careful we don't get siloed on this. So,
Yes, sir.
right? Okay.
Yeah, both comms and 311 are all looped into that goal and objective.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Leather.
thank you. Okay, I was on the previous one.
You were on increased coordination and collaboration among other city partners.
Shared stormwater facilities.
Shared stormwater facilities. So we trying to increase participation in our shared stormwater projects. We've got existing credits in existing facilities, and we're working to develop 2 new shared stormwater facilities. And these didn't fit under a specific goal, but we are reviewing our master plan every year, and we update them every 5 years.
So at this point, this is kind of a little quick update for what we've been doing in the last 5 years, and what we're asking for tonight is basically approval of the 2024 Stormwater Utility Master Plan, but just recognizing that this is a living document within the department, and that at any time, if there are recommendations that come through council over the next 5 years, then we work that into our plan. This is just what we see right now in terms of how we move forward.
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director Watson, Adam, thank you, guys. Thank you, Ms. Izo, for all your hard work on this as well, yours as well, Director Leatherman, or Assistant, sorry, I gotta get the titles right. All right, sorry. Yeah, there's a lot gone into this. What's really cool is, like you said, it's a living document, but what's more important than being a living document is the living execution of your team and how you're rapidly knocking these things out and continuing to move adaptively towards the changing needs, particularly in storm. We'll talk about storm again and again and again. It's not a sexy subject to talk about, but we're going to be talking more and more about it as a city. And what I'm excited about with the leadership of this city is that this city, through the leadership of the staff and talent, through this council, is taking the very aggressive approach for stormwater solutions across the board. Storm doesn't mean a whole lot to most of us until you start getting involved in it. And it's a coming gigantic issue for most communities. It's going to get become a larger issue. And what I'm very proud of and excited about is the city of Roswell has an incredibly competent and talented team involved in it, and that we'll be aggressive about solutions and getting ahead of this, because this is going to get trickier, not easier, as time moves down the road. And so we're going to be talking, storm's going to be in front of us more and more, so you're going to be in front of us more and more. But I'm excited about the hard work and the work that's been executed over the last 2 years. And I'm excited about what's going forward. We will be talking about storm, and there'll be some hard conversations, but thank you all for your great work on this.
Thank you, and I think it's Adam and his entire team. We are very blessed as a city to have his experience and this expertise. It is amazing. So just want to throw that out there. You know it, but you should hear it. It should be on record.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right.
Which liaison gets credit for this, Mr. Knight? Is it Will Mortland? Senator Mortland? Do you take all the credit? He's mayor, that's why. By the way, the calls have been coming in left and right this week. Wilson, step down, Mortland, take over. So it's like crazy today.
All right, wonderful. Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Since we're talking about stormwater, and you mentioned how many emails you've been getting, perhaps we could address the flooding on Crossville in front of
Christine,
Grass.
can I say something before you set up Will on this very piece? Randy, Mr. Knighton, would you address that as well? Because this is I'm sorry, changed the menu a little bit tonight with a reason. Because I wanted the master's plan to come in front of you. And I wanted you to see how important it is, I think, when you have a talented team, right, is create the policy and then have the team go out and execute. And we had a matter that we just didn't comment on, which I forgot to comment on. But we got another one coming after this, which to me is outside the lines of policy. Like, you're the board, you're the city council. This is your CEO, this city administrator, this is your team. And so it's really important to create clear policy directives and clear policy through your budget. But, like, this is big stuff. Stormwater master plan is a big deal. It's a policy document. It's a policy document you should be aware of, you should be administrating, you should be making significant judgments on what you want and what you don't want. Big time it matters. We have an item coming after this. And so it's just like today. So we've had significant rain. I don't think anybody's been surprised by it over the last 72 hours. And it's stressing a lot of systems, especially the storm system. And it's a perfect example where in the silly system that you and I have set up today, right, the city administrator and the team have budget, they have restrictions in terms of how they're able to act and respond in the city because of the way it's currently set up from an oversight perspective and a legislative perspective. And you're going to see one of those items come up next on that. We're going to talk about it. And every time one comes up, we're going to bring it up and highlight it. So Christine, I'm really glad because the last 72 hours highlights the inability of the city inside of its current architecture for the city administrator, the person who's running the city, the CEO of the city, unable to take appropriate action because of budget restrictions based upon the current system we have. So I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted to bring that up.
Just going to go on the federal.
Okay,
The floor is yours, so.
depends on how deep we want to get into this, but the cliff notes are on Bentgrass Drive on 92. There is a failed pipe in front of the U.S. Postal Service Depot Center, and that failed pipe connects, am I correct in this, connects under 92 with our storm drains, or storm drains connect to it and send it out?
The driveway pipe, or their access road.
Sure.
It's under that road. It goes from a little basin on the west side of their access road and should empty on the other side, but it's caved in and crushed. And our culvert comes into that basin, so that whole basin actually fills with water before it starts flooding the other side of the road. So it's
Right.
a huge amount of water that comes in there before it ever goes into the roadway.
So we have a crushed pipe, the water's backing up, and it's being released on the other side of 92, which is the Bentgrass Drive side. It's negatively affecting very much of a homeowner right there on that corner, but it's also shutting down Highway 92. Yesterday, I got caught in the traffic, and all of the westbound lanes were closed. Folks were having to be shuffled around by Kroger and then down to quite some distance down there to make a left and get around the traffic, but the traffic was substantial. Problem here is that this pipe is on federal land, and the federal land, we have no purview over that. Even if we were to go out and put hands on this pipe, we would then officially own the pipe. Is that correct? The process of fixing this pipe?
I don't think they'd let us.
They wouldn't even let us. So even if we wanted to go fix it, we couldn't fix it.
Not in this case.
Don't have permission. So what we've done is, last year I went and met with, I just remember his name is DJ. I cannot remember his last name. I'm sorry, Mr. DJ. But went and walked the property.
David Johnson, I believe you're referring to.
Went and saw Mr. DJ and his nice wife, and he showed me all of his property and how his backyard floods to 10 feet of water. It's getting into his basement. It's negatively affecting his livelihood. I said I would dig in on this and see what we could figure out. I start inquiring with our stormwater group. I start inquiring with our transportation group, and that's where it becomes known, yeah, we've known this has been a problem for quite some time. This is not just something that's brand new. And here's all the data that goes back with how many times it's rained, how many times we've had to close lanes, how many times we've had accidents. We've got all that data. And so start unpeeling the onion and get to a person at the United States Postal Service out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Can't remember her name. She was not very apt to respond. And so at that point, I then turn over to our state senators, and Senator Ossoff's office. I had a connection with Senator Ossoff's office. They opened a Senate inquiry, and lo and behold, 2 days later, we start getting feedback. And this would have been August of last year. They promised by October of 2023 this project was going to be fixed, it was going to be fine, we're so sorry, don't worry, end of October we're going to be all squared away. October came and went. November we check in with them. November was kind of certain things have happened, we can't get to it, maybe by the end of the year we should be all square. That didn't happen. Now we have been kicked to end of March, is that correct?
I thought it was March 1st.
March 1st? Okay, I just remember March.
It's for mobilization, not.
So mobilization to get it to start work on this project, and we have no idea if it's going to happen or not.
Federal government.
This is the federal government, and that's really as quick and dirty as I can make the cliff notes on this scenario. We are truly at the mercy of the federal government and the United States Postal Service to get this done. Speaking with Director Littlefield this morning, we were just kind of cross-checking ideas. He said, you know, in my world, I'd get out there and just rip the whole pipe up and have a trench dug to give us immediate relief, but we have no purview over that land. So we are just sitting here stuck. The real problem is that the city of Roswell resources are going into protecting our citizens from having accidents on that road. Our police are out there closing the road. Our street departments are out there in the middle of these storms closing the road. You know, when there are accidents, we're out there dealing with the accidents. And as I was stuck in the traffic myself, I was passed by a fire truck and an ambulance that couldn't get through the traffic because there was just simply nowhere to go. When you have these major thoroughfares that are closed and you force emergency vehicles into traffic that's not moving, seconds count. And you know, a call that should have taken 30 seconds for an EMS to arrive now took 5 minutes and 30 seconds. Who knows how that impacted the end of the day? These are the things that we're dealing with this scenario.
Yeah.
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Pro Tem Worthland, and I appreciate the call from one senator to another. Senator also the Senator Worthland. Just, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much, but when I say about the future, this is what I'm talking about. So we can't predict all things in the future, but what we can predict, you know the old saying, stormwater runs downhill? That one is.
I don't remember that one.
Stormwater runs downhill. And that's kind of true with the relationships of this whole issue, relation from government entity to government entity to government entity to government entity. The city of Roswell and other municipalities are going to inherit the overwhelming majority of issues and challenges and are going to ultimately be faced with the cost of fixing these. Right now, the way it works, for example, a driveway is a perfect example. Driveway, perfect example, most of us residents think, hey, that's not my responsibility. The reality is the city's going to say, no, it's yours. It's a private matter. You got to get it fixed. But stormwater issues are going to become much more complicated. That's why last year in the budget, y'all approved inspections to happen both on the public side and the private side. So this city is already advanced thinking and understanding, like the private issues are going to come cascading down upon us. And they're probably going to come cascading down on us ultimately, probably from the federal level, where there's greater and greater responsibilities for us at the local level to fix problems at the local level, because there's going to probably be mandates going to come across, there's going to be unfunded mandates. And so what we've already started on, Will, and I'm glad you brought it up, is this leadership team is already trying to start thinking about solutions, understanding that the storm issue is going to get larger. And that most residents, when they have a storm issue, don't know where to turn. So they turn to their local government. And the local government says, look, there's a public storm and there's a private storm. The private storm is what you guys have, and we got the public storm. And that's historically how it goes. But we understand that those issues are going to happen more and more and more, and that we've got to have better solutions. And it's a responsibility that we're going to unfortunately probably burden most of the cost for. Even though, technically the cost shouldn't be ours, we're probably going to end up burden a lot of this cost. So they're already starting to work on this, and that's kind of what some of this starts to deal with, is being forward-thinking, like saying, look, even though it's private stormwater issues, these are going to be the growing stormwater issues of the future, and if we don't get ahead of this, somebody will get ahead of it for us. And to your point, we're working on solutions now, and I think we're a forward-thinking city as a consequence of that, because 5 years from now or 10 years from now, we'll till you win, somebody's going to come in and say, Senator Worthland is going to be elected United States Senator, and he's going to come up with his grand ideals of an unfunded mandate for all municipalities to fix private storm issues, and that's coming down the road.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilmember Sells.
so you're saying stormwater is going to get muddier? Is that what you're saying?
Stormwater's going to get muddier.
Mr. Davidson, are there any provisions for self-help remedies in such circumstances as this that we could leverage to actually remediate this in any way?
So because this is on federal property, no. If it's-
So there's no self-help in an event of emergency?
no.
Not on federal property. If it's private property, we can protect the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens, but we are subordinate to the federal government, state government. So,
All right.
as it's on their property, this is one of those times where we are limited in what we could do. If they gave us permission, we could have been out there a year ago, and that is done. Wouldn't have been an issue.
So we need a sign that says your federal tax dollars not at work.
Yes, 100%.
Gotcha, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further comments, questions? Oh, yes, Councilmember Borthland.
If you further that idea, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, the first communication we had with them, they actually said, oh, well, why don't y'all go put your city contractors out there and go fix it, and we promise we'll pay you. And that, do you remember this conversation?
They asked if there were any contractors that we would recommend, and we don't recommend contractors, but we said, here's contractors that we've used in the past that could actually do this work. And they contacted one of them. They were out there and nobody met with them. Nobody met them there.
That's the point in this.
Well, sorry, nobody from the federal government or a representative of the federal government met them there. Adam met them there.
We tried. We tried
We absolutely
everything
tried.
we could, and they didn't even show up for the appointment. And to wrap this up, Mr. DJ Hooper, thank you for that.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Hey. Yeah, I got the first email today that showed how much impact this really is. If you want to, you talked about the data, but I think maybe we should show how often this road is closed. No, I mean, it's once a month, you know, if not more, you know, and I think that when I got, I guess you could open records request it, but when I got the email, my reply was like, this is unbelievable. You know, and it is. It's unbelievable that we are waiting for, you know, the federal government, and our roads are closed, our police are being, you know, out-resourced. I don't know, I was just shocked at how terrible of a situation this is.
It is our police force that is out there providing traffic measures to make sure that this is a safe passage of a safe detour route of some kind of way. And it's not just the city of Roswell that's getting the runaround, it's the Georgia Department of Transportation that's getting the equal amount of runaround. So it's not just us, they're as frustrated as any. Would you like to expand on that?
No, you covered it.
Okay.
Just want to talk about the great stormwater master plan that we have in front of you.
All right. All right, thank you. Thank you. Very good discussion. We appreciate the presentation. And this is a consideration to approve the 2024 Stormwater Utility Master Plan, so we'll entertain a motion to move this item forward. Motion by Councilmember Sells, second by Councilmember Morthland. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item under Public Works, item number 3, consideration to award a contract with Federal EC LLC for the Cold Harbor Stormwater Pipelining Project in an amount not to exceed $82,280. Mr. Watson.
Mr. Knight, so the purpose of this project is to clean and restore approximately 110 linear feet of 60-inch corrugated metal pipe, CMP pipe, with one of 2 different methods. We put this project out to bid to our 7 pre-qualified contractors. 4 of them provided bids. Federal EC was the lowest responsible bid, and staff recommends awarding this contract to Federal EC.
Mayor Wilson.
Mr. Chairman, can I call on Assistant City Community Development Director, Deputy Director, Mr. Leatherman? Sure. Mr. Leatherman, would you please share with the body the kind of very simple way that you would put this issue, as you put it so succinctly earlier today?
Sure, and we'll be bringing an item during the next committee meeting here after this one closes to respond to the issue that I'm going to describe. But our Public Works team have essentially gone through a budgeting process to authorize this money in your annual budget. They've also gone through a pre-qualification process to qualify the contractors that could potentially do this work. They've identified this necessary work in their master planning process. So we've essentially approved this item through a couple of different actions by the council, both at the budget level and by our pre-qualification process. And then we bring it back a third time. And as we talk about just the process that it takes, it's approximately 30 to 60 days to build up a committee item and then get it to council and the staff time associated with it. And from a pure kind of operational perspective, we would much rather use Adam's qualified time out in the field getting pipes fixed as opposed to going through some of our administrative processes that requires us to get these types of approvals for fairly routine and already approved items. And we'll be bringing that recommendation forward here at the administration agenda here momentarily as we transition meetings.
All right, thank you. Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director, Mr. Leatherman. Sorry. Every time one of these comes up, I want to point out to the elected body, to Will, Lee, Sarah, David, Alan, and Christine, not only the inanity, but the insanity of this kind of policy or lack of policy direction making, where one of the things that we've inherited, that I believe it's our responsibility to correct, in the best interest of our city government and being able to act in a cohesive manner that they're responsible for on an ongoing, this is another example of things that are coming before the body that have no business coming before the body because you've already approved it many, many times. And so it's dealing in the minutia of the ongoing operations of the business of the government. And in my estimation, this is a abrogation of responsibility to be kind of delving into this kind of minutia on an ongoing basis. It's bad business. It's bad for the city. It hurts our staff. It hurts timing. It hurts execution. It's a waste of resources. And it's very poor that these kind of things keep showing up in front of us. So I bring that to you for your deliberative knowledge and that you will do something about it.
All right, thank you, sir. Any further comment or question regarding this item? Seeing none, we will entertain a motion. Motion, Council Member Sells. Second, Council Member Borthland. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, passes unanimously. That does conclude, and we'll note that under Public Safety Police, we have no action items, but that does conclude the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for February 13, 2024. We'll entertain a motion of adjournment. Motion by Councilmember Morthland, second by Councilmember Sells. All in favor? All right, thank you very much. Give us about 90 seconds, and we will transition to the next committee meeting. Again, good evening and welcome to the Administration and Finance and Recreation and Parks Committee for February 13, 2024. The elected body, Mayor Kurt Wilson, Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember Alan Sells, Councilmember David Johnson, Councilmember Sarah Beeson, Councilmember G. Lee Hills, Councilmember William Morthland. I'm Randy Knight, the City Administrator, along with David Davidson, City Attorney, and Michelle Miller, the Assistant to the Council. Purpose of committee meetings are for city departments to convey information to the mayor and city council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda, as well as provide updates of vital and important information essential for the operation of city government. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, members of city council, and the city administrator. The city administrator serves as chair of these meetings, and this is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the members of the public are certainly welcome, we do not take public comments or questions during committee meetings. Public comments or questions are taken at the second and fourth Monday of each month, city council chambers, as well as the fifth Monday in open forum. We do encourage residents to engage our online platforms and contact the team talent here at City Hall if you have any questions or need information. We also encourage everyone to access our web service portal to report any issues or concerns, and download the Roswell City app, as well as access roswell365.com for a calendar of events. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Administration and Finance and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting of January 9th, 2024. We'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Hills, second by Councilmember Morthland. Further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Item number 2, as listed on the agenda under administration, a recommendation to amend City of Roswell Municipal Code Section 2.3.4 regarding the powers of duties delegated to the city administrator. Deputy City Administrator Jeff Leatherman.
Thank you, sir. And just to provide a couple of slides on context is, I'm really proud to continue to work with a team throughout the city of Roswell that is looking at how we are driving operational excellence throughout the entire city. And I've circled our policy and procedures initiative lead is Stephen Malone, and he is backed by a team including Brian Watson, members of our fire and police department, and others throughout the city that are taking a true hard look at how are we developing policies and ordinances throughout the city of Roswell. And as we just described in our last committee meeting, we at times are slowed down through the city's success through our process, sometimes both by ordinance but also by our own policies and procedures that we put in place. Sometimes they are effective and sometimes they are ineffective in successfully delivering services to the community. And so the recommendation that we have before you is to take a look at our delegated authority to our city administrator that will allow us to move items that are approved by mayor and council through our process much more efficiently and effectively throughout the year. And as we look at how we are evaluating these policies, we have ordinances by mayor and council, we have mayor and council policies, we have citywide operations that also fall into the policy level, and then department operations. And we're focused right now on kind of that first bullet point of ordinances around the mayor and council and how you all delegate authority to our city administrator. Fundamentally, what we're looking at is how do we revise goals and objectives that will amend ordinances and policies to streamline our decision-making, reduce redundant mayor and council review time here at not only our committee but also at the dais, create operational efficiencies which allows staff to establish concise timetables and deadlines for project completion. You heard the mayor talk about that earlier, as we continue to use time here, it slows down our delivery for the community. And sometimes in the middle of a rainstorm, quite literally, we're trying to get work done and we're held up in the process. And then allow for ongoing policy and procedure changes as necessary to comply with state and federal laws, and allowing that nimbleness in our city government to continue to evaluate policies, procedures, and how we deliver services on an ongoing basis. As we look at the delegated authority, the recommendations that you have before you will transition some operational policies for the city to the city administrator. Some examples include our human resources policies, procurement policies, and contract guidelines. The action that we're asking for today essentially sets up the framework for the city administrator to catch those responsibilities, and then we will work right behind that on revisions to our human resources, purchasing policies, and emergency ordinances. And those are queued up right behind this discussion for your next committee and council items. So this is essentially the first step so that we make sure that we have the right apparatus in place in our ordinances to move forward on other policy changes. I'm going to stop there just from a process perspective and ask any questions that you may have just as we move through this process.
Mayor Wilson.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I would like for you to make a statement on this, if you would, sir, kind of just issuing some of your
thoughts.
Yeah, as we have gone through for the past 6, 8 months, reimagining and reinventing city operations, we've had a number of city staff being involved in various committees, if you will, to take a look at all of our operations. Part of what we want to do, obviously, is to be able to serve the residents at the highest and most efficient level and to deliver quickly. Certainly, this is not obfuscate any ordinances or any policies or any approvals that the mayor and council make. But when we have an approval, either through budgetary authority or another authority per approval by mayor and council, we want to be able to have the latitude and flexibility within the organization to execute and deliver quickly. The stormwater example is a prime example. Obviously, there's a stormwater master plan. There are a priority list of stormwater projects already approved and reviewed by mayor and council. We have a list of on-call contractors already approved through a process. And so in order to be able to deliver quickly, we would certainly not want to be able to be mired in the entanglements of policy and tradition and legacy, but truly create a new organization in which we're nimble, flexible, and able to move quickly and ultimately deliver for the residents of Roswell. And so this is an outgrowth of that work in examining all of the policies, procedures, ordinances that we have within the city, and we're continuing that process. And so this is merely an attempt to be able to execute in a manner in which we believe mayor and council have directed us over the past year or so to be able to truly provide an organization that does, in fact, move toward making Roswell the #1 family community in America.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Again, as we discussed, what will come behind this as we move it forward, assuming that we move it out of committee today, is we will also be amending the procurement ordinance to match required state laws, and then transitioning the procurement ordinance as it sits right now into a policy under the city administration. Those items will also come before you at a later date in the next committee meeting as we continue to work through this process. Again, we're setting up the framework under the city administrator's authority, and then we will tuck in behind that various policies and necessary ordinance amendments moving forward. I know it's a little bit small, it's also in your packet, but this is the red line version. City Attorney Davidson and I are also working on 2 minor changes. The bottom end, which is just a fundamental change, T, U, and V, those will actually be removed from this ordinance. They are covered elsewhere in our ordinances and are not necessary here at this location. And so we're working our way through. I would say the meat of the revisions are in letter S, which you'll see start to transition the city administrator's authority into operational policies right around our procurement matters, our contracting guidelines, as well as any budgetary and fiscal management as approved in your budget process and budget ordinances, as well as emergency preparedness and response. As I mentioned earlier, that is being queued up by our fire department to come at a later date at committee. I'll be happy to answer any questions from here. As we move this through, we'll continue to work on this ordinance, and then the intent is to bring it to council at your next scheduled meeting, which would be on the 26th of this month.
Thank you, Mr. Leatherman. Questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Beeson.
I have a few questions to clarify. So in regards to section S, subsection 3, with procurement and contracting, as well as budgetary and financial management, based off of what you just suggested that's going to be coming after this and we're paving the way for it, are you implying that no longer mayor and council will be hearing RFP approvals and RFQ approvals?
In some cases, when they're required by state and federal law, those would be coming to mayor and council. In others, when they're already approved in the budget process, we would bring those to the necessary body. If that's under the approval of Mr. Knighton, that's where we would hear that and issue the contract. And if it needs to come to council based on state and federal law, then it would also come to council. Most in the public works is that's where you're going to see the requirement under the state definition.
So it's going to be mostly public works in those situations?
That are going to be coming to council.
That will be coming to council?
Correct.
And then do you have any examples of other municipalities, county, city, or otherwise, that do not hear RFQ or RFP approvals? Because in my mind, that is very exceptional, and I don't mean that in a positive light. I work professionally with RFPs and RFQs very often. I oversee the management of those. I just was awarded 2 public contracts in the last week through an RFQ process. I've never seen a process where a municipality bypasses the approval of either a county commission or the city officials.
Can I ask you a question, sir?
Yes.
What was the size of those awards, if you can do,
One is an on-call,
okay?
and then the other is significant contracts, right?
Exactly.
But the on-call, I mean, it could be $5,
I didn't
it
mean to
could
embarrass
be
you by
five.
the
No,
amount.
no,
They're large contracts, right?
one is a large and one is an on-call.
So you've got right now in the city, you probably know this, what I'm suggesting for us as a body is that we stop minutia. It's ridiculous. You're limiting your staff and talent, the people that you entrust to run the city, to come to you to authorize any expenditure over $25,000. On a $200 million budget, that is beyond, it's a name. And so they're trying to say, look, can the city administrator have authority to spend money, for example, above $25,000, as an example? I wouldn't want to call it an RFP and RFQ, to your point. I think that making a distinction upon that's a whole other matter, because I don't think an RFP and RFQ should fall under $25,000. And honestly, like, the responsibility falls on the city administrator's hands. Like, if that's where it should lie, right? It should lie among the person that we're saying is running the city on day-to-day and an operational perspective. And so there's a huge responsibility there. And I think for whatever reason in the city, you know, there's been this, and I don't want to put too much conjecture, there's been this huge oversight apparatus from the elected body, just built into processes left and right. Like, talk about lack of trust. Like, we don't trust you, we don't trust you, therefore everything you do, even though we've approved it, right, approved it in the budget, approved it in the master plan, approved it through another authorization. On the fourth time, by the way, you got to come by, and just like the one we just had, $80,000, $82,000. You got to approve it again. You got to go to the dais and approve it. I don't know where that came from in the city, but this is an attempt, to your point, and I'm not addressing the RFP, RFQ. I would suggest to you is change the RFQ, RFP process to look like the state. To me, that would be the recommendation. Make the RFQ, RFP process look like the states, and make the authorizations for money be like the states. Because if you don't trust the person that's executing it, then you got the wrong person, right? Get somebody else. Ultimately, this is about trust. And I would like the organization to build in more trust in the people that we say we entrust to do this every day. And our actions and our words don't align with that. And so part of this is from a policy standpoint to start aligning our words with what I think our intent is on actions, which is trust. Because I think we do trust our city staff and talent to do this. Gosh knows, we've been working pretty aggressively for the last 2 years together to create alignment, not only reorganization, but on execution on a whole lot of levels. And so I think it's time for us to figure this out, Sarah, however you want to, because that's why I asked. And sorry, I didn't mean to embarrass you on the size. Well, so one, you said one was on call, which makes sense, which means greater flexibility, and two, which means you're proven, which we need more of. And the other one's pretty sizable.
It's over 25,000. I mean, to your point, I understand the need for efficiency and eradicating bottlenecks and moving away from a siloed approach, but I do have significant concerns with altering our methods for procurement and contracting when we do not have a procurement manager, we do not have a financial director, we do not have a CFO. Every single tier of our financial department, of the person who I would normally look at Ryan and say, what are your thoughts on this? I don't have that person to ask right now. And so those are some of my major hesitations, especially if we're bringing in, the understanding is we're bringing in new leadership and we're having a reorganization. I would much rather defer to that person to lead that approach and how they would want to shape those formalities.
I'm glad you brought that up. So 2 years ago, when we came into office, there were a number of things, and I'm a big believer in listening to the people who do the jobs. And one of the things that the leadership team said almost across the board was, your purchasing process, your city, you elected leaders, Kurt, you and your new team, and doesn't matter if it's the old team, you're hurting us with the current purchasing process, right? And unpacking that we didn't unpack it immediately, it took some time. Well, there was some fallout on that, quite frankly, because, and by the way, some of them got politicized, when the reality was just actually looking at the methodology and saying, this does not make sense, and it's hurting the people who are trying to execute it, the directors inside of the city government, a day in, day out process. And guess what? There's some people who didn't like that because it was changing the status quo. So there's a reason there's not a purchasing director today. There's a reason there's not a finance director today. Because part of that was those apparatuses needed to be updated, they needed to change, and they needed to get in alignment with the leadership of the city administrator and the leadership of the directors, because not everything was in alignment. Because I can tell you to a person, what I got feedback was from the directors, so it's incorrect, almost to a person, the senior leadership was, our purchasing process really hampers my ability, not me, mayor, but my job as a director or a senior executive person, it hurts my ability to do your job. You guys are hurting me. Can you please make this better? It's not common sense. And so we began that process. This is a step in that. To your point, I would say, no, you're right, you don't have Ryan here, but you do have Jeff Leatherman. You do have Randy Knight. You do have David Davidson. And we do have a working finance department with Georgette in as the interim director of finance in place that is working. We have a clean opinion on our finances. We maintain a AAA bond rating. And that's, so I want to be, just because we don't have some people in place doesn't mean we're not going to get some people in place. But we're still adhering with a very disciplined approach to financial functions in the city. And I want to be very careful about this. And I also want to be very clear is that there are people who are currently running our city who are saying, help us, help us. They're saying, help us fix some of the problems that you keep saying you want us to fix. Make it easier for us to do our job. That's really what this is about.
Councilmember Sells.
So, when you come back with the procurement policies, which I suppose.
Yeah.
Sorry. When you come back with procurement policies and things like that, will it be bounded in any way? Is it like if it's budgeted and it's over some percentage or over some dollar amount? Because I agree, there's a difference between procurement and RFQ.
Yeah.
Procurement should be normal course of business, and I can't see that the council needs to be asking about the paper clips and things like that. But is there bounding around this?
Yes, and I think probably what would be helpful is, as we bring this forward to council, is to pair that, and I can take that as essentially a marching away order, so that you can see how they're going to work together. And that way then you'll see the delegated authority, and then you'll see those limits associated both with state law and then the practices that we're going to be putting in place for what the city administrator is going to have authority to do, and then what you will see at the council level. Because I think to Councilmember Beeson's point, when we have on-call contracts that can potentially reach up to $1 million annually, that would supersede and tip our scales into needing to come to mayor and council for approval. It's the question of what do we do the second time when you have an $82,000 pipelining project after you've already approved that on-call contract at $1 million. Does that need to come back the second time? And that's the second problem that we're trying to solve.
That's a process question. That's not a
Correct.
scope question. That's not a bounding question. That's
Correct.
a process question.
And right now, that process is bound up in our ordinance. And so that's what needs to change. And it needs to change in both places, both at the city administrator level for his authority, but also his or her authority, and also at the procurement level in the ordinance. But we also need to have a policy then at the city administrator level behind that is enacted by staff, so that there's
Just to be
accountability.
clear, if it's in the budget, then we can say that the procurement is clear, the instructions are clear, to the extent that the budget is clear, that the city administrator has the authority to do X or Y.
That would be the intent, unless there's a state law that would supersede that budget authority that would require it to bring.
But at the same time, we don't want to budget at the PO level, because we'll
Correct.
spend our entire lives just budgeting and we wouldn't be governed. So.
That is correct, yes.
Amen, brother.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, we will entertain a motion for this item. Yes, I'm sorry, Councilmember Beeson.
Just one question with this, in terms of the timing of it, what is the significance behind the timing? Is there any reason why we could not table this until we have a CFO or a finance director or purchasing manager in place?
I would answer that from an operational perspective, that we continue to have the need to move the city forward in the most efficient way possible. And it's difficult to predict when those positions may be filled moving it forward. And I think that's why, just kind of thinking out loud and bringing both the procurement ordinance and the city administrator's ordinance revisions together may give you some comfort at that time to understand how really the limits are working together hand in hand, and may provide a little bit more assurance that not only are we compliant with all necessary state, federal laws, but then we're also implementing a best practice model. Because right now what I would say is that we don't have a best practice model. We truly are in the minutia that create a lot of extra process that isn't necessary.
Mayor Wilson.
I'm sorry, Alan, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so I guess a couple of things that I would suggest to that point is, first of all, we're delegating authority. So I don't know that we need to wait on a CFO or anybody else to delegate authority to people that we want to have authority. That's one thing. And the second thing is that if we want the CFO is a scorekeeper. So if we want to institute something where we say for every variance over some number amount, we want to see a report on a quarterly basis that Randy has approved these 15 or 20 things, and we can look at those things on an exception basis. That's certainly within the realm of the CFO. And you can have both the controls that you want, as well as the authority to the person that needs it. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
No, I'm just going to,
Oh, Mayor Wilson.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead, sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
In response to Councilmember Sells, I understand that you're looking purely at the process of it. I'm more so concerned about the checks and balances aspect of it, because in this case, you're removing a significant amount of checks and balances, which is the elected officials hearing these contracts or procurement or whatever it is that is related to this in a public setting, in a public forum, and you're moving it behind closed doors to a singular person. Love you, Randy, completely trust you. That part's irrelevant, but you're changing the balance of a system. And you're doing it at a time where there's a significant power imbalance, where those who would normally be checking these things, like our procurement manager, doesn't exist. That's a non-existent person. So it's not that I don't see a need for an alteration in the policy itself or a need to create more efficiency, to your point. It's that I want to make sure that we are evolving congruently across all boards when we're creating essentially a whole new department at all the leadership levels at finance right now. Those are my major concerns.
Mayor Wilson, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Sarah, I never thought I'd hear the day that when Mike Palermo was gone, you would step in his place and sound just like Mike Palermo.
Hey, that man wanted to check stormwater variants.
That's right.
I'm saying
So
that we're
I just want to
already
let you know
checking.
that you have carried on the tradition of Mike very well. Let me say in the simplest of terms, being here most every day. David, I'll wait until you're through, because I do want to make sure you hear me on this, brother. So being here every day, I can tell you that the thing that I hear and have heard, so to your point, why are we doing it now? I wish we'd done it 2 years ago. I wish we'd done it a year ago. I don't want to wait another 6 months to do it, because the thing I get clearly from this group of people that I trust to run our city is, please give me some freedom, and please get out of my way a little bit. And so what I would say to you is, so I kind of make fun of you a little bit, like with Mike, like, hey, we, the elected officials, the politicians, need to get out of the way of our staff being able to do their job every day. And every time that we wax on about our responsibilities and oversights, I would tell you, here's the system, right? You know, checks and balances, like we're like a nice medium. It's like this. We got checks and balances out the yin-yang. That's why we had way too many checks and balances in the purchasing system. So much so, it was paralysis by analysis, like killing the operational system. I mean, you're not even getting here. Like, you still got a long way to go to get your staff talent back to an operational, operating ongoing mechanism that makes sense. I mean, your check and balances right now, you and I as elected officials, we are stepping on their throat all the time. We got to stop it. I'm telling you, like, that's why I'm making my impassioned plea setting this up on the last one at $82,000. Like, I'm setting you up like, guys, you see how silly this is? You're wasting your time, their time, the public's time. Like, that $82,000 expenditure should have already been done and done. Randy probably shouldn't even seen it. The Public Works Director should be responsible for that. He or she has a significant budget. Like to Alan's point, you can put in variances in your system. You don't even need a CFO, but it'd be nice when we get a CFO, because we're getting a world-class CFO, and that's why we're taking our time. But, to your point, your checks and balances are like this, Sarah. You, me, Lee, Will, David, Alan, and Christine, we are choking our system. We got to stop that.
Yes, Councilmember Sells.
I would just say to Sarah's point, I might swing around and agree with you, depending on what we come back with those boundaries, right? So there needs to be some boundaries around this. So we set authorities that say this is what we as a council are comfortable with. But then after that, it is the job of the CFO to call balls and strikes. And if we want a report that says we want to see all of those variances on a quarterly basis, that's certainly something that we could ask for. And then you can set the policy to let people do their job, and you set the process in place to check and make sure that it's done according to the way that the city council wants. That would be my counsel.
Councilmember Johnson.
Go back a couple slides.
Sure. Tell me when to stop.
Go, go forward two. One more. All right. Can we see the amendments and changes to the procurement processes that we're going to approve before we change where we delegate the power?
Yeah, so the intent would be, I will tuck those in.
I feel like we're delegating the power,
Right.
and then we're gonna see the change.
Yeah, in hearing this discussion, what I would recommend we do is, as we bring this forward to the elected body for consideration on the amendment to the ordinance, we do both the city administrator's authority and the procurement amendment, along with any other details that y'all need from the actual thresholds, so that we can have clarity of how they work together. Because I think that seems to be that unknown seems to be the point of just question in the discussion. And if we pair both of those together, I think it'll answer a lot of the questions that we have before us today, and we can bring those simultaneously together.
And then, a question for you, Randy. Where is, Jeff, can you go back to the end slide?
Sure.
Sorry. Where is your biggest backlog in your job? Right?
I'm sorry?
Where's your biggest backlog in your job, like day to day? You know, besides me emailing you. You know, because I think this is, we are changing some power from elected representatives to a non-elected representative.
100%.
Right?
100%.
And I think the citizens of Roswell might be somewhat concerned about changing that.
David?
We also will be somewhat happy with, you know, we don't have to sit through, no offense to Mr. Watson, you know, I need $25,001 to fix a pipe.
David, I think the citizen, I think the majority of citizens of Roswell have put upon you as the elected leadership to make sensible decisions to do the right thing and to not fall into the trap of the historical political narrative about this oversight nonsense. I'm telling you, this city is so uptight about public comment, oversight, and I don't care who doesn't like what I'm saying right now, because it's so true. Because the vast majority of residents want you to be a good steward of your legal authority, right? And part of that means is having the good wisdom and judgment to not be in minutia. This city, rather than doing things historically, has been caught into minutia so it can have lots of fights about little things it didn't care about. And the reason I'm responding so vociferously on this is because I've seen it. I've seen it with my own two eyes. I've seen such a waste of time by the elected public officials on nonsense, taking what duly should have been put in the hands of the staff and talent so they could execute operationally. So guess what? The elected officials jumped into stuff to make themselves relevant, to not deal with serious issues. You and I have a lot of serious public policy things we need to work on and figure out. Serious things that we need to make hard decisions about. A budget's one of them, by the way, right? But the problem with the past, and I'm asking for us to change it, is to stop being in the minutia of the day-to-day operations. It's bad governance. And to your point, are there some people in the city that are going to jump up and say, oh, you need oversight of that? You better believe they are. But is it our responsibility to get 100% unanimity of all residents in the city of Roswell to agree on something? Or is it for us to do what we believe is the right thing for the residents of Roswell, for the short-term, midterm, and long-term? I don't think this one's hard. Do I think that there are people who are more outspoken about who I need more oversight? No, I don't need more oversight. I need more trust. Trust works in organizations a lot of different ways, either the lack of trust or the giving of trust. And if you want an organization to excel, you have to give the ability to give trust. This organization has fought that year after year after year. You have a special responsibility, David, as being part of the solution on this.
Right, but Randy won't be here forever, because I trust Randy. And I hope he has a 20, 25-year career. If we're giving power to the next city administrator, do we trust him or not?
Organizationally, you have to do it, yes.
And the other thing is, you know, if $25,000 is where Brian has to come up and present to us, why can't we as a council just raise that tomorrow? You know, make it $100,000.
That's what this is about.
Yeah, I know that, but like, you know, I know that's what that's about, but like, I feel like there's two issues in my mind. Like, are we talking about someone like Brian or Jeff Littlefield, these little tiny things have been budgeted and all that? Or are we talking about we want to you know, thinking of the right words here. With the RFQ and RFP process, we want to make sure, you know, are we taking that away from council on major projects?
God, I hope so. God, I hope so, because I think if you tell,
I don't know if the citizens want that.
I'm telling you what, what our fellow citizens, what you and our colleagues, our friends and people that put us in this position, you know what they want? They want us to be smart and responsible and do the right thing. And what I know, having been now involved in this government from the inside out, is this city didn't save money by having the RFQ and RFP processes. It wasted money. This city didn't deliver better results. It delivered worse results. Now, I get the inside knowledge. I'll stop talking if you want me to, Sarah.
No,
Okay.
I agree with him. It's just, I think we're going down the wrong rabbit hole.
Tell me the rabbit hole.
No, I think at this point, the focus should be on the policy, because right now you're trying to set in place the framework for policy, right? And I think we're getting the cart before the horse where we're actually looking at the policies itself, right?
We're in agreement.
Well, so you said we want to not have to have Brian, as much as we all love Brian. We all love Brian. We don't want him to have to come up here for $25,000 or $82,000. Well, that means that you have to empower somebody to be that check and balance that she's talking about.
I'll
And so,
the
but this
policy
is
is first,
well, this
before
is
change the power.
well, we aren't giving up the opportunity to address that. And I'm sorry, I may have misinterpreted, but I thought we were talking about, okay, we are changing an element of our written document today, and we're going to change the other element of our written document, which will include these boundaries. So if you're going to take away the opportunity or the obligation of these guys to come in front of us for $82,000 4 times, it's good stewardship on our part to find somebody that we can delegate that authority to and manage that delegation appropriately. That's what we're talking about.
And and to your point, it's like any organization. You do that through organization. You do it through hiring and firing, right?
Well, and governance. And governance as well. And by governance, I mean specifically.
I'm addressing the trust question. Governance is exactly right.
Well, trust but verifies.
You make the decision, like, you're the decision maker on who the city administrator is. That's your decision, right? That is ultimately your call. You decide who runs the city. And at any given moment, and that person you entrust with the responsibility to run the organization, right? If you make a decision you're not comfortable with, then you change the decision, obviously, right? From an organizational perspective. And I think the reason I say that, David, is one of the dangers, one of the seductions is trying to manage too many pieces of minutia rather than giving it to people and the process and the organization to develop. Like, I want the city council out of the business of managing minutia. I think it's bad governance. I don't think it's good for my fellow residents. I'm not saying that because, yes, power, I think some power should shift. Most definitely. This check and balances thing, like we've got the chokehold on our staff. That power needs to shift. They need more power so they can do what we want them to do. You still retain the power. The power is very simple when you look at the org chart. It will remain very simple when you look at the org chart. You always have the power. But do you give away some of your decision-making? Of course you do. The more decision-making you keep in your hands, the more you hamstrung the city, in my opinion, from an organizational, ongoing, operational perspective. And that's one of the things, I can tell you, after 2 years, it wasn't very hard to come in. Wow, look at this organization, how hamstrung this organization is. The organization's scared because the elected officials, historically, right, raise all these silly issues and then beat them over the head and then tell them they can't make a decision. And I'm saying, yeah, we need to shift that. If we want them to be really good, we need to shift them. We need to give them the freedom to do what we ask them to do.
Councilmember Beeson.
Since this is an ordinance, is this 1 or 2 readings if this moves forward? So it's 2 readings. Since we do have 2 readings in the sake of time and the interest of moving the conversation forward, I understand the concerns of staff. I understand leadership where the mayor's trying to take this conversation. I think I need to be briefed by staff on this of the full picture of what they're trying to utilize this ordinance for. I think before committee meetings, that would be when it's most helpful for me or most constructive for me to be briefed on these in the same way that we are with the UDC or other ordinance changes, so that we can have more of a back and forth, a conversational tone, at least with staff to hear you guys firsthand, y'all firsthand. So I'm fine with moving this forward tonight out of committee, with the understanding that we will be briefed by staff with not only what this ordinance means, its further implications, and how you plan to utilize it with other changes.
Okay. Thank you very much. And also, we've had some conversation about how we convey information, ensure that the elected body is properly positioned to be able to make decisions. And so we've had some conversations about how we do that. In fact, today we have.
A couple hours ago.
Yeah, so anyway, thank you very much. Is there any further question or discussion regarding this item? All right, seeing none, we'll entertain a motion.
Motion to move this forward.
Motion by Councilmember Hills, second by Councilmember Paul. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? All right, thank you. Passes.
Why are you opposed, David?
I said I want to see the policy before it's into the power. I still do. I'm not against this, right? And I know we'll have time and all that, and also to Sarah's point, we got this 48 hours ago.
Yeah,
You know,
this is all very new.
with no briefing. Yeah, I can't sit here and vote yes for that with 48 hours notice, no briefing for staff.
Well, dude, how many that happens to me all the time. This stuff you guys put in front of me all the time, like literally beforehand, like, and it's so, come on, man, really? This sounds so political, David.
This isn't political for me, Mayor Wilson. I'm not being political here.
I think you are being
We
political.
are changing power from a elected body to a non-elected body. And in a lot of the areas that you're talking about, we agree, right? A $90,000 pipe fix that's under budget, that's with an approved contractor, should not come up to me in committee and again on city council. I do not disagree with that at all. But I want to see where all the policy changes and where the boundaries, as Councilman Sells said, will be. That's all I want.
And all I'm saying is, David, ultimately, it's about trust. Ultimately, with this issue, honestly, it's about trust.
I trust every single person in this room.
And I'm just saying, ultimately, we have to make a decision. Do we trust delegating that power or do we not? And what I'm saying to you, my brother, is that a lot of times in the past, the city has really struggled with giving trust up. Like, and to me, that's what the issue is. Like, I'm with you. We could break this down to 12 different ways. But what I really want to challenge us to think about is like, if we don't trust, and tell me, by the way, this issue is so important to me. Like, if we don't trust them and we go this way, I'll resign. I am not gonna be the mayor of I'm serious. I'm not gonna be the mayor of a city that doesn't begin to trust the people that it says, we want you to do this, and continue to manage the things that pass. And this is not on you, David, but what I'm saying to you is, I've listened to these conversations time after time, and I've watched them, and I've watched what it does to the morale. I've watched what it does to the efficiency, and I've watched what it does when we say we want them to do things. And you know what the truth of the matter is? It's not you, it's all of us. Like, we end up treating these incredibly talented people like errand boys and errand girls. We do. And I gotta tell you, I'm so adamantly opposed to that. Like, these are not errand boys and errand girls. They're not here to do my bidding. They're not here to do your bidding. They are here to execute the vision and the policies that you say you want, right? But I want to be very clear about this. Like, I want to dismantle this fallacy that I can't allow grown, smart people to go do the job I want them to do. And I'm with you. Like, do we need to be some clear on some policy? But dude, I'm telling you, it is so deep. Look at our ordinances. Like, if you said, David, to me, one of the things is, I want to break our ordinances in half, I would say, oh my God, that's such a great thing to do. You know, like, oh my God, keep taking the crap off of these people. And that's why, like, this, I'm so deeply committed to this issue. Like, I'm not going to be mayor in a city where the city council says, we're going to continue to put the hammer down on the staff and ask them to do the same thing and expect a different result. I'm not going to do that. And like, this is such an important issue. And to your point, however it gets cleared, but it's ultimately about trust. And if we will not change the dynamic of trust until you and I decide to give it, and people are going to say, well, there's abuse. There's always abuse in the system. The question is, what kind of people do you have in your system that mitigate it? And like people say, they want to eliminate all abuse. That never happens. Never happens in every business, never happens in any government. But the overall effect is, how good are your people really executing the grand vision, mission, strategy that you have? And so, I don't know, this is a really big deal. It's a gigantic deal, and that's why I says, why are you voting no? And he said, well, I don't understand it. Well, I'm telling you, brother, I think it's ultimately about trust.
I think it's about, we're delegating a power from elected to non-elected positions.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Right, I get that. I want to know more about it. I want to know where the boundaries are. I don't think there's anything wrong with knowing where the boundaries are in all areas of your life. This is one of the areas where I feel like I want to know where our policies are going to be before I give away the power. That's it.
All right, that item, let's move forward with a 5-to-1 vote. And we'll move on to the next item. Item number 3, consideration of the First Amendment to the Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Roswell and the Fulton County School District to address permitting, inspection, and land development activity fees for capital construction projects. Mr. Letterman.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. What we're requesting of Mayor and Council on this item is for the past 5 years, and this MOU did expire in December, we're requesting that it be extended for another 5 years, and essentially allows Fulton County Schools to inspect their own improvements in their school buildings with their staff and contractors when they make those improvements, to ensure not only that they comply with state and federal law, but any other ordinances or regulations that they would have in place. And it allows them that authority within the City of Roswell to move that forward. Again, we have this MOU, we've had it for the past 5 years, and we're requesting that we continue that MOU with Fulton County Schools moving forward.
All right, thank you. Questions? Councilmember Morthland.
Real quick, I read the MOU, and on number 8 on page 15 of the packet, the only thing that stood out to me is in section 8, the City of Roswell or the State of Georgia shall continue to be responsible for periodic fire marshal inspections and enforcement action where necessary in all erosion control measures for capital facilities improvement projects and portable classrooms installations constructed by Fulton County District. Why are we responsible for erosion control measures?
Because of the direct impact that that has when they're doing capital improvements on our stormwater system. So we continue to maintain the authority to inspect those to ensure that their best practices are put in place for capital improvement projects only. So if they were going to essentially build a new Crabapple Middle School like they just recently did, the impact that that could potentially have from a stormwater perspective if they're not maintaining that site during the construction process has a downstream effect to the City of Roswell. And so we want to continue to retain that authority should they need to do capital improvements on their properties. And the same with fire marshal is having that expertise in the schools in order to make those inspections.
Mr. Davidson wanted to I'm sorry, Councilmember Morthland. Go ahead, please.
I'm going to see how this plays out.
Okay. Attorney Davidson.
So Jeff is correct. And also the regulations that we're enforcing are state regulations. So the state fire marshal gives our fire marshal the ability to do the inspections, just like the state gives our engineers the ability to do the inspections for stormwater stuff. So that's why we are the inspecting authority for both of those. But they are state regulations that Fulton County will have to follow.
Councilmember Sells.
I believe I discussed it with somebody, but this is at the planning phase as well. So our stormwater will be the ones who sign off on their stormwater plan from the beginning. Is that correct? So if they wanted to build Crabapple Middle, it'd have to be under the auspices of our stormwater. Is that correct?
I can get back to you on that specific answer unless Brian knows right off that. You're nodding your head, yes? Yes.
Yeah,
so it would come to us for the planning process.
So we are inspecting what we approved in the first place is
Yes.
the point. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further question or comment? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Hills, second by Councilmember Johnson. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, thank you, passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda, item number 4, consideration to move the defined contribution retirement plan from Mission Square to Transamerica and the defined benefit retirement plan from GMEBS to Transamerica. Also consideration to form a retirement plan committee.
it's time for the fun stuff. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We are asking for consideration to move defined contributions. First, let me introduce myself. Linda Warren. I have members of my dream team here who sat patiently in HR to get through this. But we're asking for consideration to move the defined contribution retirement plan from Mission Square to Transamerica and the defined benefit retirement plan from Jim Mebbs to Transamerica. This is a heavy lift. I have Mr. Jim Fallon here, our retirement consultant with AMRET, and I have our actuary here. We have members from Transamerica. I'll let Jim introduce the members.
Thank you so much, Linda. Mayor and Council, it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. Mayor and Council, it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. I am Jim Fallon, your retirement plan consultant. With me this evening, we also have Joe Griffin, who is the actuary. He's the numbers cruncher that primarily plays a role on the defined benefit side of things. So we have a couple plans we'll be talking about tonight. Ed Emerson with Morris, Manning & Martin is the city's outside retirement plan counsel. And then we have Jason Bolding from Transamerica. They are the recommended firm to take over the administration of the city's retirement plans going forward. You gonna do it? So a little brief history. The city maintains two retirement plans, a defined contribution plan, which in the private sector you're familiar with 401k plans. So you have a 457 plan that is paired with a 401a plan. The 457 is the employee dollars. And the 401a receives the city match in base contributions, and that just emulates the design of a 401k in the private sector. You also have what's called a frozen or closed defined benefit pension plan, which was closed about 13 years ago, and to new hires. And the city did a good thing back then in closing the plan in terms of trying to limit their unfunded liabilities and restricting the potential, they thought at the time probably, of the cost getting somewhat out of control. But they never really dealt with the administration of that DB component at the time when they implemented the DC plan. So next slide. So as I mentioned, the DB plan has been closed for over a decade. While we've got Joe Griffin here, I'm going to ask him to walk through just some of the numbers on the DB plan, just to kind of get you, hopefully at a high level, familiar with, I would just say, the seriousness of the situation. And we did actually, as fate would have it, receive updated what's called an actuarial valuation, which is an annual report that GMEPS provides to the city on the funded status and also the contribution that you need to make, and also has numbers like unfunded liability. Unfunded liability, that's basically your debt, if you will. Those numbers actually just came in this year, this afternoon. So Joe?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mayor, council members. I'm going to focus primarily on the defined benefit plan. You closed that plan to new hires back in 2011, so it's been closed for over a decade, okay? That plan resides with GMA, so GMA has all control over the administration, the investing of that plan. They have an actuary that sends you a report every year that tells you what the city has to contribute to that closed plan. When we close a plan, we're expecting the cost to go down over time, okay? That's not happening here with GMA, so I wanted to kind of walk you through. I looked at your reports all the way back to the last 11 years now that we got the new one. And this is what's happening. So you've got a plan where you used to have almost 500 employees in it. Over the past decade, we're down to about 175 actively employed. And so you've got a maturing plan. At the same time, the actuary is expecting that funded status to go from the 87% up to 100%, okay? That's the goal. That's not what's happening here. Your plan has gone from 88% down to 80 now that I got the most recent valuation. And what's more alarming is back then you had a $9.4 million unfunded pension liability. Just because you closed the plan, you still have to pay that $9.4 million off. That thing has grown to over $25 million in the past decade. And I strongly believe that it has to do with the fact that you're a big part of GMA, and they set their assumptions based on the participants of GMA and not the city of Roswell.
So what we're seeing is losses after losses after losses. So I think what Jim's proposing for you is that you take control of this plan and take it out of GMA and get yourself on the right path to get you to 100% funded, so that way we're not looking at 30 million, 40 million in unfunded liability, which is going to be the city's obligation regardless of whether it's in GMA or not in GMA. And so this will give you the opportunity to take it. Your contribution requirement back in 10 years ago was about 3.5 million to this plan. Most recent actuarial report recommends 5.5 million. So I would have expected those numbers to go down, and they're all going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, we just got your new number this year, 5.5 million. Last year it was 5 million.
You got the other chart to show, the one you showed us the other day, which is, I think, a little clearer for
If we
everybody to
really
see.
want to go that far in the weeds, we've got it. Yes.
Well, it just shows, I think.
We don't have it on the screen.
Yeah, it shows the
Actually, we
it's a
have.
little easier to see the
We
drama.
have the one from we don't have the updated one we updated this afternoon, but you'll get we actually have hard copies here. If we could pass those out, that'd be great.
I think the residents might want to see this too.
Okay.
You can throw it in there.
Like this?
Mind if I ask a couple questions, Mr. Chairman?
Yes. I'm sorry, Councilmember Sells.
We may be out of order, but since you're here on this issue, if I could. Is the increase because of mortality increases or mortality table issues, or is it the expenses, or is it the investments didn't perform as expected? Is it all the above? Can you sort of
Yeah, so
categorize it for us?
it's a combination, but the majority of it is the demographics of the city being different than what the actuary is assuming. Investments have done fairly well in their fund over the past decade. They did change assumptions twice over this period, which increased the cost, but you continue to have year over year actuarial losses on your demographics. And so they're setting those assumptions based on a whole bunch of smaller organizations, and I feel like there's a disconnect.
So is our pool, our population segregated within this group, or is it lumped into GMA as a whole?
Yeah, so
our pool is, in other words, our actuarial tables are built on the entirety of everybody in GMA, not on our particular participants, is what you're telling me.
yeah, the plan itself is based on your membership, and you have assets that are set aside about 100 million, but the assumptions that are being set are across the entire organization and then being applied to Roswell.
Yeah, Alan, to your, Mr. Chairman, yeah, to your point, to the point of your questioning, exactly right. So the city of Roswell has been subsidizing this fund in a significant manner. The second, serious subsidizing. And the second part is, you've had no impact, you have no control of decision-making. So you're working, you've got basically a blind agent that's investing your money that you have no say over, and you're subsidizing as a very large member in the group. So this is go back to the past. I'm David and Sarah, I hope you're opposed to this, against this, because this just got thrown at you. And by the way, just like the last thing, it's very common sense, it's from the approach, but it's absolutely ridiculous, like you think about it. This is costing us so much money, and it's based upon, I'm sorry, not being willing to unpack decision-making, not being willing to change the status quo, challenge the status quo, not be willing to give authority decision-making over to talented team and staff and say, go fix things, which is how this is happening, by the way, because the authority and responsibility is trying to change internally. Because in the past, look at this, how much money this has cost the city of Roswell. It's dramatic. There's a chart here. I want to show the chart. I want to show you the unfunded liability has gone from a little bit over $9 million a year to over $22 million a year. That's so illogical, it's not even funny in the financial world. I can't imagine when you guys first got this, you must have been aghast when you saw this. Like you said, dire. Like, this is, talk about lack of fiduciary responsibility. This city it's an aberration. It's so bad. This is not the chart.
This is not the updated version, but it does show you through 2023. We don't have the cells highlighted, but if you go over to 2023, the number under column K, third number down 22.
You highlight line 7.
Just to be clear,
Just highlight line 7.
Yeah, that unfunded amount
That
is
was
not
last
due.
year's number.
It's a pay-as-you-go system, right? It's a pay-as-you-go. So the 22 million is not, that's not a
In this
grant.
case, you're paying as you go and you're paying.
Yeah.
But it's not, we expect it to go down like a mortgage,
Sure, sure.
the principal, and it's not, it's going up.
So I may be jumping ahead, but our plan is to pull out of this, correct? Yes, sir. So I want to ask questions specifically about that.
Yes.
Specifically about pulling out. If we pull out, do we create our own actuarial tables for these 178? Or do we pull, in other words, are we penalized by pulling out with a bad valuation? Or are we pulling out our members? This unfunded liability, as you, if your theory is holds, it's based on a curve, right?
Yep.
That does not apply to our 178 lives. Is that correct?
Correct.
So it's based on a set of lives that has a steeper curve or a longer lifespan, I suppose, right? Demographics, whatever it is. So if we pull ours out, then our unfunded liability may be, what do you think our unfunded liability is on our curve? 178 is a very small population.
By the way, correct the numbers a little bit, because it's not really 178, it's well over 400 when you look at retirees.
Yeah, you have.
So these are employed, the 178.
Active employees are still in the plan.
Current employees,
Are still in that plan.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, okay, so it's
And let me be clear, it's not just the mortality tables are set,
globally.
yeah, I mean, you're not large enough to have your own mortality tables. The things I'm talking about is the kind of salary increases you give your employees, when we expect them to retire, who's going to leave employment. You've got 300 employees that have left employment that have a vested pension to be paid out of this fund in the future. It's taking all those assumptions and making it specific to your group, and then I can tell you whether it's 25 million, whether it's 22 million, or whether it's 30 million, because I can't promise that 25 is the number until we run them.
Well, what assumptions with respect to, for instance, the benefits to the beneficiaries that are currently in place differ for our pool versus the GMA pool that you're looking at? You had to look at that, right?
Well, I have not looked at your specific data. I just recently got it, but.
So this,
but just-
before we pull out, we need to find out if it's going to be a penalty for pulling out or not. That's a must.
Yeah,
You
I understand what you're saying, but I think there's a greater risk of staying in this organization and not taking
How long would it
control.
take if you know that the benefits, the beneficiaries, like, just take that one line item.
Yeah,
That is a very knowable fact. We know what the benefits are for the beneficiaries that are currently receiving.
yep,
And we know what GMA is projecting for that, correct?
yeah.
So on that particular line item, we can say, are we going to have a benefit or a penalty for pulling out? That's what I'd like to know.
Mr. Chairman, can I recognize the gentleman from Transamerica?
Yes, sir. I think since you're talking benefits, that's who we're moving to with Transamerica. So I can assure you, we could.
I'm speaking of benefits specific to the beneficiaries that are drawing today.
Correct. We can 100% mirror that. The only thing we're talking here is the unfunded liabilities to the city. But John Doe, we're going to 100% mirror exactly what his benefits are currently and what they're projected to be in the future. It's the funding of the city is what he's discussing.
We're in a risk pool called GMA.
Yes.
Correct.
And when we pull out, we are either paying in or not paying in. Am I correct?
When
we
the
pull
assets
out of
move,
GMA.
when the assets move out, Council, they'll probably move out in what's called an in-kind formation. What we're proposing, the same custodian would stay, U.S. Bank is the custodian for GMA.
Right.
They've agreed to stay on, so that piece wouldn't even change. So it would be moving from one pocket to another pocket there, if you will, with them. So there'd be no investment impact. The last time we did this, it was a $5,000 fee.
Okay.
That GMIB's charged.
I'll put that in my pen.
No, and it's fine. So you have roughly $100 million in there. That $100 million, along with the liabilities.
Follows the lives.
Follows the lives, and then you can manage that. Right now, you're just getting an actual report, which is essentially an invoice. And oh, by the way, the one they just sent you is a $5.5 million invoice, but you had no control over how those numbers were determined.
So the nutshell, the transaction that we're talking about here.
We're changing administrators. We're basically just changing administrators.
So we move all of our assets that are currently invested. We move all of our lives that are currently benefiting, as well as those lives that are continuing to be contributed to or contributed. Do they contribute? Are these contributory or is it strict?
This one is not. The other plan is.
This may help clarify.
Go, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. And this may help add some clarity. If you could discuss how GMA made the assumptions, and the assumptions perhaps were not the assumptions that were accurate for the city because of the way they made the assumptions. And the rates changed from 7.75 to 7.375 based on their assumptions, where that is where we're getting hurt as a city. If you could elaborate on that, maybe that'll help clarify.
Yeah, and just to give you some context, your fund at $100 million is the third largest fund in GMA, and
We're dining out on our assets, is that what?
your plan's been closed for a decade. So
13 years.
Just to kind of give you context of where you fit in that pool. But what we would do is, if you pull out and we run an assumption study, effectively what we're going to do is we're going to take the data from your specific group, and we're going to look at the patterns in which people retired. We're going to work with staff to find out, what kind of salary increases people are going to get. We're going to work with your investment consultant to figure out what your long-term rate is expected on this fund, and we're going to all make that all very specific to your population. Normally, we see gains and losses in these valuations. That's the way the actuaries work. We're guaranteed to be wrong every year when we take that snapshot, but we want to see gains offsetting losses. You have had now 11 straight years of losses.
Not just losses, dramatic losses.
Big losses. Something is not right here, and I don't know exactly what's not right until I can really scrutinize the numbers. And I'm afraid that 9.4, I was coming to you today to say 9.4 went to 22.3, right? And just today, I found out it went up another $3.5 million.
What's it at? The unfunded's at 25?
We haven't sent you that memo yet, sir.
No, I didn't get that.
It just came out today.
$25 million.
There's no commitment for payment for that $25 million to be pulled out,
You will pay it off eventually,
unless it's wrong.
unless it's wrong,
That's right.
but it's probably not zero.
It's not zero.
It
No,
may be
I get
more,
that,
it
I
may be
get
less,
that.
but unless you have control over it, we can't put you into a strategy of paying that thing down.
Right.
And I'm afraid it's going to keep getting worse if we don't.
Counselor, to put it in a little bit, maybe better perspective, the city has paid $47.6 million over the last 10 years to pay off an unfunded liability of $9.4 million back in 2014.
Sounds like subprime auto.
So,
But I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but I haven't seen
and you still have
anything like this.
$25.7 million left to go.
Still, yeah, unfunded's
It's like
20.
you've maxed out your credit card and you're not even paying
It is
the minimum payment.
It is unbelievable is what it is. And it goes to the larger discussion, kind of like we were talking about earlier. Like, it's hard for me, like when you talk about some of the policies earlier, like in finding out some of the things that are going on in the city and some of the things that didn't get taken care of and some of the oversight issues. And we're defending some of those folks and going, come on, guys, let's don't do that. Let's don't do that. Like, this is a pox on anybody's house. Like, it's a pox on our house right now. We are now the stewards of this.
This is not easy stuff.
No, sir.
Okay, this is not easy stuff, but it's knowable. I mean, you could probably give me to the penny what the current beneficiaries are going to pay out within plus minus 2 or 3%. Well, whatever your margin of error is on your stats curve, right?
Well,
Yeah.
the staff gets a report every month.
Yeah, exactly.
Every month it's actually.
Okay, well, that's 416 of them, right, of the not, almost half of the folks that we're talking about are already receiving benefits at a defined amount with an escalator or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and right now
Tell me
you're-
exactly what that's going to be.
You're paying about $8 million in benefits and expenses for this plan.
On the DB side.
On the DB
On the
side.
DB side. Just the DB side.
That's going out of the $100 million in assets that are set aside.
Gotcha.
And
Putting in
the
about
rest-
An
5.
8% load is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilmember Johnson?
I think you answered my question, but you have no projections of what, when we move over, what the unfunded liabilities would be until you have the plan in your hand.
Until I have that thing in my hand, I really can't give you
That's fine. Also, it seems like Councilman Sells is very passionate about this, and maybe it's one of the reasons why elected officials should be over something.
A lot of strong opinions, but someone who doesn't have an opinion.
You have to draw that out for me, David. I don't think I understand your point.
I want to see policies before I delegate that.
So I'm going to take it by granted that by your statement tonight, you're probably going to vote in opposition to the recommendations that are coming from the HR Director, Linda Ward.
No, because this comes to mayor and council. This is our time to shine.
Well, the last time we came for
Guys.
mayor and council, and
Cinder.
Councilmember Johnson said no, so I'm kind of confused.
These have numbers I can understand a lot better than the other ones.
Mayor and council also too, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but I just wanted to add that
Go ahead.
neither of these programs, the DB or the DC, has been bid out in literally decades.
Interesting.
We came on.
I thought we had an RFQ process.
That's what
I'm
we did.
confused.
We did that last
I'm
year.
confused. We had an RFQ process?
We did, but GMA does not. Don't
Yeah,
stop.
but we do too. I'm confused. This amazing, great oversight that the council has. Where's it been executed the last 13 years? I'm a little confused. How much money did you cost the city of Roswell, these great policies? Oh my gosh, I'm a little confused. Guys, help me out this. Help me understand this wisdom.
I can help you too.
Over here. I want to hear this.
So, in this situation, I think really kudos goes to Ms. Warren, who recognized the fact that with us using the GMA program, we are essentially the cash cow for a larger group of municipalities, being the third largest within their buy-in. That said, I think bringing this to our attention and allowing us to discuss this in a public forum brings to light a lot of concerns that I think many of us share. I don't think anyone at this table right now is saying, no, I'm not wanting to go in this direction. And I wholeheartedly appreciate a lot of the expertise coming from Councilmember Sells and having a very strong financial background in order to analyze this, as well as Councilmember Hall for understanding the issues that led to this point. That said, I would love to hear it if we have anybody who'd like to entertain a motion to move this forward so that we can keep the item going.
And Councilmember Hall.
I just want to comment, and I thank you very much for bringing this forward and for providing all the information, but this speaks to complacency and relying on old processes and, we've been with this company or with GMA and we don't need to look at it because they have our best interest in heart. Or we've had this firm doing our work for 19 years and we don't need to look at it. And complacency is dangerous. It's very dangerous, and that's where this city's been. It's been in complacency. It's been mired in these processes, and I'm delighted that we're moving forward and hope that we take next steps to look at what we had discussed about perhaps doing the numbers on a potential buyout of the DC program, especially when the interest rate environment is in our favor, just as a long-term strategy. But thank you very much.
And thank you,
Council-
Council.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
As long as you, Councilmember Borthwick had a comment. You did.
Yes. 7 or so minutes ago.
Jump in, bud.
Let me, I was just going to say to paint a broad picture with a wide stroke of the paintbrush here, when I see this is the first time I've seen this. When I see this, the first thing that comes to mind is, holy cow, this looks like the federal debt and the Social Security Administration shortfalls that we have coming our way for future generations. We got to stop this now.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Warren.
Yes, I just want to say thank you for your support and for hearing us out on this. I also want to say that this was a team effort. It was my team here along with our retirement consultant, Sharon and Jeff lended a hand, a heavy lift here, and they lended a hand as well. So I just wanted to say thank you to them for their support and their assistance with this.
Thank you.
And the finance team, of course.
Yeah.
And the returning.
And of course, our attorneys. Oh, everyone. But thank you, thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Reading in packet page 24 or 4A, it says best practices call for competitive bid process over 5 years. Is that something that we have in our policy and procedures now? Is that something that we'll need to add as an elected body?
That's something that you can add as an elected body.
So currently, there's no city policy to review this every 5 years.
Counselor, we will make sure that you do. We didn't even have a consultant overseeing any of these until they heard my firm back toward the fall of 2022. So we literally immediately dove into this. And just so you know, we've kind of gotten off the slide here a little bit. We've talked a lot about the GMA on the defined benefit side. On the defined contribution side, there's also been going to be, if you approve it, a tremendous benefit, mostly in that side for the employees. A reduction in fees on the funds, the underlying funds that are in the program. And those programs, when I got in, and to staff's credit, they recognized that there was not best practices in place. We came in, so it's now you're seeing the result of about a year and a half's worth of studies and work and interviews, and even focus groups among us. And I've talked to a number of your employees personally. So I think that together it's an opportunity to really bring the technology up. Your staff will have state-of-the-art technology to administer the programs. Your employees will have state-of-the-art technology to check their accounts out themselves. We are also going to have on-site education counselors every month. So probably every week for a year or so, Transamerica is committed to their team to doing whatever it takes. It's been a long time coming, but when you go to a defined contribution plan away from a defined benefit plan, you really need to emphasize education. And that part of the service obligation is not been there. So you transfer the risk to the employee, but you got to help them understand how to invest those dollars. And we think that we've got an opportunity. We know we've got an opportunity. We've done this many times to really enhance, and we think we can create a lot of good, positive goodwill here amongst the employees. Yes, sir.
Councilmember Johnson?
I just wanted to point out that we have policy and boundaries in place. It really helps empower the staff.
Yeah, well, let me just refer, do you have the spreadsheet in front of you that you can't see? The residents can't see this, but everybody else can see the spreadsheet. So I just want to point out two things, just kind of from a dramatic perspective. You can see the contribution amount as a percent of payroll was 14.94% in 2014. You can see it's 39.27% in 2024. And the unfunded liability payment as a percentage of payroll in 2014 was 6.09%. And amazingly, in 2024, it is 26.98%. Those are staggering numbers. I mean, I imagine you don't come across these very often in your business where you can see, like, you see this, like, this is an aberration, how bad it is. It's really.
Yeah, just to make your point, we were at $22.3 million, right? You put $3.3 million towards that 23 million, and it went up.
Exactly.
That's a problem.
It's incredible.
And it's the
.7.
accrued liability that's driving that, right?
Correct. That's correct.
You can also see the assumptions on the investment rate of return and the inflation rate over the years, which you have the city of Roswell has no input on those numbers, which obviously is of consequence when you're managing $100 million.
That's right, and we will set those assumptions specific to how you decide to invest that $100 million. So it will be your assumption.
But I'm going to say, based upon the wisdom of Councilman Johnson in the last time, that we probably should pass on this and defer it and wait until another committee meeting until we address this item, because obviously you just got this an hour ago and you haven't had enough time to review it, so.
I read it over the weekend.
All right, Councilmember Borthwick?
Doesn't GMA have a fiduciary responsibility to act in our best interest?
That's an excellent question. They do, but they also are going to run the plan for all their membership.
My question there is, they have fiduciary responsibility to act in our best interest. Were they ever giving us a heads up that this was taking place?
They give you the report every year. You just didn't have anyone to interpret it.
Okay. Councilmember Hills?
Would that have been reviewed by maybe a former HR director or a former financial director here at the city of Roswell?
Yes, the city report is what we get.
I'd like to note for the record, Roswell Truth, to pay attention to that. Thank you.
So, Councilmember Hills, I just want to make sure, what was the question? I just want to make sure that everybody here got on the record.
If there was a responsibility here in the city of Roswell for a former HR director, who we have a competent one here, and a financial director for the city of Roswell to be checking on this every single year.
So you're saying that you would have an expectation, Councilmember Hills, that the
Absolutely.
Director of
I'll rely on
Finance,
that.
the Director of Finance would have knowledge of this issue
Yes.
and be able to communicate it to, one, the city administrator, and two, the city council.
Absolutely.
on an ongoing basis, correct? You would have that as an understanding?
Correct, Mayor. Not even an understanding, an expectation.
And
I
it-
rely on that.
Yeah.
Councilmember Sells.
Yeah, I assume is this actuarially accrued liability in our financial statements as a liability? Is it on the balance sheet? You
yes.
guys probably don't know that. It is on the balance sheet. So we've been watching the balance sheet go up $60 million over the last 10 years, 11 years. The liabilities, okay? That's a problem.
The goal tonight here, though, is to bring both funds under one umbrella so we can manage it properly and work alongside transit to get this done. It's super, it's important.
Linda, when you say both funds, just give clarity to everybody. When you
The
say,
defined contribution funds and the DD.
thanks, so everybody know, let everybody know what a defined contribution fund is and what a DB fund is, so there's clarity and understanding going forward on making that decision. Will you let everybody know what that is, the two differences on the DB and DCB?
With the defined contribution fund, the participants themselves can put the money towards it. The defined benefit fund is what the city of Roswell is funding for them.
So in layman's language, a DCB would be a 401K and a DB would be a pension fund. And the DB pension fund is basically, forgive this language, the parlance, I don't mean this thing, it ended in 2011. There are no new entry points into the DB fund, the pension fund. DB is pension. There's no new entryways. There haven't been any new entrants into that since 2011. But you still have close to 200 employees that are working for the city of Roswell that are part of the DB fund. And you have a total of over 400 due to retirees and survivors, I think, in the entire DB fund. So it's a significant fund still. All of the new people that entered the city of Roswell, whether they're a city council person or because these city council people can't wait for the DCBs. They're very excited about it. Defined contribution fund. Or a city employee, they all enter into the DCBs. Just let everybody, so what we're talking about is an old program, the DB, which has a significant amount of money to it, and it needs to be brought under control.
That's correct.
Needs to be modernized.
Modernized.
Yes.
And just to be clear, Mr. Mayor, too, on the question from the council members, fiduciary responsibility, even though GMA did take on some, they can never take it away entirely in the city of Roswell.
Well, I want to say this, the fiduciary responsibility of everything, including the last issue and this issue is your issue we talked about, is us. It's up to the elected leadership. We are responsible for the fiduciary, everything fiduciary oriented in the city. And the question is, how do we manage that? And that's a fair question, right? But I would say that's why you hear me so impassionately speak about, I do believe in delegating serious responsibilities to professional people based upon your oversight in policy making. And it's a serious issue. And I think this is a great example. I think you got new leadership that came into play. You got new leadership that came into play. And I think you began to see things, hey, come to light that maybe should have come to light previously that didn't come to light. And had significant financial consequences. And it wasn't because of the wisdom of our oversight. It was because of the wisdom of us empowering the people that we entrust to run the city to have more power. That's my 2 cents.
Councilmember Johnson.
If we wanted to put forth a policy of a bid process every 5 years, would this now be the time to do that, or do that in a future committee meeting, or?
And I would say, David, I would be opposed to that, not on the merits of the basis you're bringing it up. I don't want to create that policy tonight. I think that that's something I would recommend with due deference to you, sir, that you go to Christine. Yes.
Councilmember Hall.
I guess I look at this as that best practices don't always have to be policies. So a lot of things in the financial world, in the accounting world, in the accounting rules are defined as best practices. This falls into best practices. I mean, we may say that best practice is every 3 years, or if the interest rate, depending on what the interest rate environment is. I don't know that we want to lock ourselves into a 5-year. You know, if interest rates just really skyrocket here in the next 2 years, we may want to take some drastic action on something like that instead of having a policy where an employee might say, oh, well, it's only the third year, let's wait 3 more years. So I think that we need to have staff that work in the best practices world, where perhaps in the past they were not empowered to do that.
Yeah, I guess my fear is, obviously for 30 years, we were not probably in the best practices based on y'all's professional opinions from what I heard tonight. So I want to make sure that, and I think y'all will be fine. I'm not worried about, I don't think we're going to put $3 million in and lose, 10 million or whatever we're losing every year, So, but I want to make sure that we are, this is a massive financial cost to the taxpayer of Roswell.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, and we have to be good stewards of their money. And I want to make sure that we continue, thank you. You just say that you likely are saving the taxpayer of Roswell millions of dollars every year. We'll figure out.
Arguably, you cost us, we cost the city $49 million.
Exactly. Absolutely. And I think this is a great thing that we are doing tonight, 100% for it. And we already make a motion after I make this last comment. But I just want to make sure that we are never caught in that same path that we were caught for the last 30 years, right? I want to make sure we'll have that here. I mean, we were with Mission Square for 30 years, correct? So I want to make sure that that doesn't happen again.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Councilmember Beeson.
Can I just make one comment? So the difference in GMA is they send you a report every year with what you have to contribute. When you have your own actuary come in, he's going to run through the results of that year's report and say, this is what changed, this is why, and you'll have that annual checkup or meeting to see where things are headed. Right now, you just get a report, and who knows what was doing.
Are you Mr. Foster?
No, I'm Mr. Griffin. But I am Foster and Foster, yes.
All right.
With the closed plan, we do potentially have the opportunity, as Councilmember Hill.
That's all right.
We're twins. You're almost there.
You just lost a vote, I'm sorry.
Just trying to serve. Mentioned earlier, I forgot what I was going to mention, but just the fiduciary responsibility, all that. And Sharon and I talked about the prudent practices. I gave her a book a month ago on the prudent practices of investment stewards. So these are the types of things that we would want in terms of best practices for the city to run their plans on. Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Councilmember Sells.
You obviously work with a lot of municipalities.
Yes, sir.
And would you say, are there still DB plans?
Yes, there's
in
still
the hustings
plans out there. Unfortunately, in your case with me in GMA, it's a lot of the smaller ones, smaller cities. Most of the folks in the larger metro areas have gone defined contribution many years ago and addressed the DB component at the same time. So I'll give you some numbers on that, but yes, in every instance that we have been involved where this type of transition has occurred, it has resulted in the benefit to the city.
Councilmember Beeson.
The chair entertain a motion.
Yes, we'll entertain a motion if there are no further questions.
I have one last comment.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Mayor Wilson.
Yeah, I just think, going back, is that it is worth the residents of Roswell knowing is that over the last 10 years, not 13 years, and those 13 years is a different number, that ostensibly $49 million of Roswell city taxpayers' money has been wasted on the poor management of the city resources. And that is a record that nobody should run away from and everybody should be aware of. That's reality. And I can tell you that's one of the things is like from my leadership style and my vision, David, which you're a part of. We're a part of this as a team. We're about to go to retreat. We're about to go retreat. This is big stuff, man. Like, I'm not going to continue the city does not want us to return to the ways of the past. It is not. It does not want the political infighting, bickering, nonsense, silly issues to do not serve the residents of this city. It does not. And so for those who are out there, and I realize there's still agents of chaos, those who used to be in political power who are lost, and they're responsible for the $49 million of lost taxpayers' money, good luck to them. But that's not what the people of Roswell want. They elected you and I to be serious about our governance, and they elected you and I to be different about our governance, and they elected you and I to figure it out together. And I know we can. I know we can figure this out together. But, look, to Lee's point, like, there's some agents of chaos out here who will not report this story, and they'll report some nonsensical story about a $25,000 PO. And a $25,000 or a $75,000 purchase order pales in comparison to $49 million over 10 years, which would get worse, by the way, if you don't take action. And so, and that's 10 years, not 13 years. We don't have the 13-year number. We can pull the 13-year number because there's a 13-year number. By the way, those first 3 years aren't as bad as these last 10, obviously, because the sizes go. But this is what you and I are here to do. We're here to govern together, and we're here to change the city for the long term, for the good, and for us to be different. And I'm not going to play politics on this, and I don't expect any of the rest of us to. And like, if we don't change this, but if we go political on this, you know what? I'd say, shame on us. Shame on us.
Any further questions or comments? Excuse me. If not, we'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion, Councilmember Hills. Motion, second, Councilmember Beeson. Third, Councilmember Hall.
You can take it. I'm just trying to keep this going, man.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Moving to finance. Item number 5.
We do this every other week. Thank y'all. Have a good day. We appreciate it. Thanks for the sharp eyes.
All right. All right, item number 5, consideration of a resolution to reallocate community development block grant coronavirus CDBG CV funds. That we,
There we go, baby. Thank you, guys. So these are community development block grant funds that were passed down through the CARES Act. We got in 2020, we have some unexpended funds in the amount of $37,901.04. These funds have to be used for low to moderate income persons, and they have to be used to respond to, prevent, or prepare for infectious diseases like the coronavirus. They're becoming increasingly difficult to expend, and so staff would like to reallocate the funds to the Recreation, Parks, Historic, and Cultural Affairs Department for tuition offsets and to enhance the Roswell Adaptive Friendship Camp for the summer of 2024. The reason we're bringing this here is because the feds require us to do an amendment to our annual action plan, which involves us doing a 30-day public comment period, so we want to get direction on that. If we can reallocate those funds to Rec and Parks, we would put a notice in the paper next week, and then we'd come back to the council in March to officially reallocate the funds.
Councilmember Hall.
Two questions. Is this the last of the, is this the last of the funds?
The rest of the funds are currently with the Child Development Association, and they're spending those very quickly. So these were some little morsels, and we had to recapture a few funds and package them together to try to make the most out of them.
And when we do this amendment, does it affect our single audit that was just completed? Thanks.
All right. Further questions regarding this item? Councilmember Beeson.
So as a point of clarity, the two requirements for this type of CDBG, because it's not a standard CDBG fund, is not only does it have to be used towards those who are low to moderately income persons, but also it has to be in response to prevent, prepare for, or respond to infectious diseases, which is why we cannot use it for Roswell Housing Authority. We cannot use it for our typical nonprofits that we've allocated to in the past, and which is why we're geared towards a program of at-risk, health-wise, but also at-risk income-wise children, correct?
That is correct.
Understood. I'm good, thank you.
All right, thank you. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Hall, second by Councilmember Hills. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 6, consideration of a budget amendment, BA 1001-5000-02-26, for the purchase of land in the amount of $4,511,295. Ms. McCray.
Good evening. So the city of Roswell, we approved the resolution to purchase the parcel of land at the corner of Woodstock Road and Bowen Road for $4.5 million. So this budget amendment will allow for allocation of fund balance for the land purchase. And the reason it's coming now is because we finally got the full amount that we paid for.
All right, any questions regarding this item? All right, seeing none, we'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Hall, second by Councilmember Morthland. Further discussion? Seeing none? All in favor? All right, passes unanimously. That does conclude the Administration, Finance, and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting for this evening. We'll entertain a motion of adjournment. Motion by Councilmember Beeson, second by Councilmember Morthland. All in favor? All right, passes. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Never fails tonight, but I'm like, oh, sure will be good. I'll be doing 6:30. I'm never out there.